So let's talk about how much is this gonna cost. The motherboard right now is going between $200 to $220. The CPU is $365 for the 7900X, and the GPU is around $300. The Crucial RAM is going for $105. This Cougar case sets you back at $149, and the SSD is also $149. Then comes the PSU, fans, and AIO. In total, this PC is gonna set you back $1,762 at the point of me making this video. Welcome to Tech Notice. In this video, we're going to be building a PC, but not just any PC. It's going to be an AMD PC that has a lot of support for the future, because now the Ryzen 9000 is going to come out, but this also supports the next generation and probably the generation after as well. But did you know that you can have Intel Quicksync on AMD platform? Well, that's confusing. That's my plan for this video. I want to get Intel Quicksync on this PC, and it's gonna look absolutely awesome. Licensing Windows is cheap and easy with whokeys.com, and if you use the code TN20, you get an extra discount. Complete the purchase, copy the key, and paste it to the activation settings. And you're all done. Also check out their Microsoft Office 19 license and use the same code TN20 for the extra discount. Check out whokeys.com in the video description below. For the motherboard, we're going to be using this Gigabyte B650 Aorus Elite AX Ice, which is basically a white themed motherboard. Now there is the X670E version of this as well, but that is quite a bit more expensive. This is a little bit more affordable one. The AM5 socket is absolutely amazing because it is supported for a very long time. And for the CPU we're going to be using for this one is the Ryzen 9 7900X. So this is the 12 core and 24 thread CPU, and it's gonna go to the socket just like that. I always pop the CPU cover off before. I don't like it doing the pop thing. Keep the CPU packet and the socket cover always in the motherboard box, because then you'll never forget where they are. Because whenever you pack this down, that's where you're gonna find them. So then, the CPU upgrade. How much of an upgrade? What's the performance boost that we can expect on this platform? So AMD promises about 16 to 20% uplift in IPC for the next generation 9000 series Ryzen processors. And if we move this processor up to the 16 cores as well, we're looking probably around 30% performance. But if we're looking at the history of how long the AM4 socket was, we probably can get up to 2x the performance of some of the future CPUs as well. So the CPU upgrades look very, very good. Now for the SSD, I've got something very special. So this is the Samsung 990 EVO. So this is Samsung's first Gen 5 with an asterisk SSD, because this is a kind of like a hybrid. This is Gen 4 and Gen 5 at the same time. So I'm interested how this is going to perform on this platform, because this is a potentially Gen 5 platform. It can also get warm or quite warmish, and because of that, we've got a very interesting cooler for this. In fact, absolutely overkill cooler for this SSD. This is single-sided, which means that there's no chips underneath, just everything on the top, which means it can be cooled from the top, all of it. And if you haven't seen my review of this one yet, I highly recommend checking this one out, because you'll realize that that is a very good performance SSD, as well as the price point now, because it's dropped in price. It was launched a little bit more expensive, and I don't think it made sense, but now it does make sense. So I'm gonna have that one in there, and we don't actually need this motherboard heatsink, because the cooler you'll see now is very, very different. So SSD upgrades. Here we have 2 TB for the OS, but there are 2 more PCIe Gen 4 X4 slots underneath, so you can upgrade the SSDs, 3 SSDs in total. Now, if you upgrade the motherboard as well, you can get up to 4, which is even nicer, and then all of them can be Gen 4 and then Gen 5, the top slot as well, which goes directly to the CPU, which I think you're gonna very much like it. This is the T-Force Duo AIO CPU and SSD liquid cooler Siren Duo from Team Group. I am not sure what happened with this cooler, because I can't find it anymore. I covered it on the channel a little while ago, but now I can't find it. But I'm very curious to see if we can actually use it on this build here, because it is white, so it's going to fit in our color theme. For starting, let's clean the CPU and the cooler. Whoa, that was a lot. Look at that. Look how dirty it is. So we'll take some thermal paste. That is plenty. Now what I'm gonna do is I'll get that side on first. We have to use the included AMD brackets. Then I'm gonna take the thermal pad that came with the cooler. I've already used it before when we did the testing, but that goes on top of the SSD just like that. The SSD doesn't actually plug in there. The SSD goes into this like bottom bracket first. There's these tiny screws that actually screw on the side of this. Now there's two standoffs. The one that I got from Gigabyte is the one that's a normal one that, you know, you just install anywhere. But because this is a little bit thicker and because it's a little bit custom thing, you need a little bit of a lower M.2 standoff. So I'm gonna install that one now, and then now that should go in easy. SSD in, and then there we go. Alrighty. And then now on the top you have this RGB kind of a block that goes on top of this, and that can go down just like that. This attaches magnetically, and then you can have this come down somewhere over there. But as you can see, it's quite a short cable. That's one of the downsides of this. They'll have to have an extension which is actually meant for the fans on the cooler, but I'll have to use this 5-volt header somewhere over there and then extend it just like that under the GPU, but we'll do that bit later. Now for RAM, I'm using this Crucial Pro memory kit. So this is the 32 gigabytes, which for creators I think could be a little bit more, but it's 6,000 megatransfers per second. This is a new thing from Crucial actually. So, oh, look at that. That is a really cool heatsink. You see, the RAM upgrade gets a little bit tricky because the RAM we have there is 6,000 megahertz and it's 32 gigabyte kit. Now, as a creator, I highly recommend getting 64, and it's not that much more expensive. Extra $50, $60, $70 if you want to get 64 gigabyte kit, but for creators, I think it's highly recommended. If you want to put 4 sticks on Ryzen, that is probably not going to work as well as on Intel, because Ryzen's IMC on this CPU is a little bit lower than on the Intel's 14th gen, for example, but the next generation is promising, which means that the RAM upgrade for the next CPU upgrade might be even bigger as well. Maximum I would keep on this platform is 2 sticks up to 96 gigabytes. That is weird. They've installed the heatsinks the other way, which means that the Crucial logo, can you see here, actually goes towards like the inside of the PC, not outside. Pretty cool white RAM. By the way, all the links that I'm talking about are in the description below if you want to pick up any of these things. Now, I'm gonna put this motherboard on the side, because we'll deal with that in a minute. Next, we're gonna have to prepare the case. And for the case, we have something very, very interesting as well. So this is the Cougar FV270, and it's got a curved glass in the front. There's a lot of glass, which makes this case very heavy. Look at this. So, if you're looking at the case, it's got quite an interesting airflow. 120mm fans on the sides here only. Then you've got one fan reversed on the bottom in here that's supposed to shoot the air towards the GPU and inside here. And then you've got an exhaust from the top, magnetic dust cover as well that we can take off. Then you've got some extra fan support on the bottom here underneath the GPU, and these are 120mm fans as well, and the 120mm fan in the back as well. Now, this top, you've got a little orange around here, which is going to fit with our AMD build. And this cooler bracket, as you can see, that does fit 140mm fans, 2 of them, so 280 or 360mm radiator on the top there. So there's some support of a 2.5 inch and 3.5 inch drives, I think, in here, in there, and then on the back of this panel there. I'm most likely going to be removing all of this. I like that all the thumb screws are actually silver, which is pretty cool. And the case also has an included GPU bracket, as you can see over here. Unfortunately, it's not so easily adjustable as you'd like. Okay, my bad. The side actually does fit 140mm ones as well. Holes aren't 140mm. They're a little bit bigger. So 140mm can go on the sides as well as in the back and bottom as well. So quite a lot of fan support actually. Here's an odd feature about this case. This front fan actually comes off. If you click here, you can just take this bit off. And there's a fan and there's just these pogo pins underneath there. And you can swap this fan out with this. This is basically your little place for where you can put your statues. It's illuminated, it's the same RGB as for the rest, and you can put an item in there and then let it just, you know, spin around in there. I think it's slightly odd, but I don't know what you think. I don't know how to use that. I don't know, I just think it's a bit silly. It's a bit odd, isn't it? I don't know. Would you put something like that in there? It's slightly odd. I don't know. What do you think? Now the top bracket actually comes off through 2 screws, which means we can get our motherboard installed. Okay. And then this is gonna go over there. So here's our motherboard screws. Even though the box has like assortment compartments, all of the screws are just in one plastic bag all together, so you're gonna have to sort them yourself. Actually, we do have some special fans here as well that actually match with this build, which are these new Cougar A-Polar 120 ARGB white fans. And these are daisy chainable, but I think they should just click in if I'm not mistaken. So, take a look at these fans. So they're white, they're from Cougar. Oh, this little orange is gonna match with the top there as well. Little orange accents in there. So as you can see, they've got these quick release kind of brackets in here, and they will just clip in between the fans. So let's take a look. We've got our female and then male pins, and they should just click in like that. There we go. Now they're clicked in, and they transfer the PWM fan signal as well as RGB signal to there. Also, these fans don't have a normal thickness. They are 28 millimeters thick, which is 3 millimeters thicker than your usual fans. Whoa. Quite a lot of force, and there we go. The good thing is they do come with extra screws for the radiator, because this is a different thickness than your usual 120 millimeter fan, which means that your normal fans from the AIO that came with your AIO, they probably don't fit or don't reach quite through the fan, but they do in here. So I've got that radiator there, and here's the end piece. The end piece is actually coming from the male pins, so I'm actually going to swap them around this way because I want all the cables to come from that side. Now the cool thing is you can actually cheat a little bit now with the screw holes, because you don't have to have screws for everything because they kind of stick together. But right now what happens to me is the middle one is bowing out a little bit. So I highly recommend putting 2 more screws just diagonally into the middle ones, so you don't have exactly all 12 screws, but just 6 screws, and that's gonna hold them nicely tight together. And that's gonna go in there like that. I made a mistake, another mistake. The fan end piece doesn't actually fit between the tubes here. So I'm gonna have to put the male pins on that side to actually put the end piece in. So let's undo this guy and then redo it. So right now I'm thinking, how much air do I want to put in? There's 2 more fans on the side there, and then 2 more I can put on the bottom as well, on one on the back. So I think we're going to do airflow in from the bottom and in from the sides, and then it just all goes out from the top and on the back there as well. Okay, this case, should you be upgrading this? Well, I don't think so, because when you go in with this case, you probably want to keep this for a long time. There's no upgrades really necessary here. It fits everything, it gives you everything you need, and it's quite a good price point. Now there are a few positions that the top AIO can go as well. I put it in the furthest towards the front position. You can put it in further back if you wanted to, but I'm starting to hit this little bracket in there, so I left a little gap in the back because now I've got nice enough of space to actually plug in all my power cables there as well. Talking about power cables, we're going to be using this guy here. So this is the Phanteks Revolt 1000 watt platinum power supply. This is actually in collaboration with Seasonic. If you look in the back here, powered by Seasonic. So it's a Seasonic power supply. It's got 80 plus platinum power rating, which is good. It's got PCIe Gen 5 support if you need it to, but I want some nice black cables, and these already come with included black cable kit. Bear in mind, you do have to buy it separately, the cable kit, but it is very nice cables. Accessing the power supply is super simple. I've got the PC on now. All you have to do is undo this little thumb screw, okay, and then just pull this off, and voila, here's your power supply and all the cables. Oh, you want to add something? Oh, did you drop something down there? Well, that's easy, and putting it back is as easy, just in there, and then one screw. I like that. So the PSU is not inserted from the back, but from inside. So I'm gonna make the end tag go underneath. I've never installed the PSU like that. But that was simple. Look how simple it is to plug in things for the motherboard, for example. So this is one of the motherboard cables, goes in there. The other one. This is the easiest power supply installation ever, just because all of this is empty. I've seen some like covers that come from the side and doing that, but cover that comes off like that, that's the best option that I've seen. Now remember, we needed a little bit of a ARGB extension for that cable in there, so I'm going to do that now. I'll just plug in this on the bottom there, and this one of the female headers can go in like that. Then we'll make this just be behind the PSU, and then this cable is going to be behind the GPU, and the rest of it can just go underneath there. Okay, the final bit is the GPU. Now, for that, because I want the Intel Quicksync, we're going to be using the Intel Arc A770. I did a whole dedicated video on that. Highly recommend go checking that one out, because I'll explain in there why some of these Arc cards are better than RTX 4090s, for example. You might be thinking, oh, why don't you use a white GPU for this build then? I think there are a few black accents in this build, and I think this is going to be one of those as well. That's going to be nice and black. Now, because this GPU is so small, this GPU SAC bracket is actually not doing anything, and it kind of looks ridiculous, so I'm just going to take it off. GPU upgrade here. This is the Arc A770, and right now this is the best Intel GPU that you can get. Obviously, you can put all sorts of GPUs there because the length of GPUs that it supports is very wide. It does support up to 420mm GPUs, and then this GPU bracket, you can actually use it, but mine is a little bit small, so I don't need to use a GPU SAC bracket. But you can put very thick graphics cards here if you want 4090, 5090, feel free. Basically, any GPU you want to put in here, it fits, and it's completely fine. I think this is just a very good budget option, and I can't wait what Intel's going to do with their next generation. Is this going to be B770? One thing that I do recognize straight away is that this SSD heatsink block is very close to the GPU. Now, the GPU is not touching it, but there's literally 2-3 millimeters in between. And the back of the GPU gets usually very hot, and I'm wondering if that's going to start to heat up this SSD block. Now all I have to do is a little bit of cable management, plug in some final things, and we can start to turn the PC on. Okay, I know this is a mess, but one thing I do have to say about the back of the case and the cable management, there is actually a lot of room. The depth between here is loads, like you can put lots of cables in here and don't need to worry about it. I really was a bit lazy in here, but if you look closely, there are lots of cable ties where you can put the cables from the top and from the sides. The one thing I kind of miss in here is the fan hub and ARGB hub, because I did have to buy these extension cables and extend the ARGB because there's so many that comes from the fans and everything. But what would be really cool to do one of those cable-less builds in here on one of those motherboards where you'd have the connectors on the other side of the motherboard, as you can see here. So that would be cool. So these cables just arrived from Amazon, and these are the 5-volt ARGB splitters because we don't have enough ARGB on this motherboard. I'm going to leave the links for these in the description below, but these are all female. There are these little female to male connectors as well that come with it, so you can just pop them in there, so you can make it male as well if you wanted to or if you needed to, which I'm actually going to need to do. I'll have to pop this in to connect them. So here's how this works. So I've popped this into the ARGB header on the motherboard, so the cable's there, and then I'm going to take the converters out, and you're just going to pop these inside this, so that makes the cable from male to female. And there we go, 1, 2 and 3. There was so much space in the back, I literally didn't clean up any of the wires. I'm just going to leave it in there because why not? No one's going to see in there, and that just makes it easier. Everything white. Is this the way to go? This white block in there looks pretty cool as well, actually. So then, I have updated the BIOS and actually set up all the windows from scratch as well. So we've got our 12-core 7900X CPU in here. We've got 32 gigs of RAM running at 6000 megahertz. Seems to be going quite easy on that crucial one in there. We've got Samsung 990 EVO 2 terabytes as our disk. I'm going to open the sensors so we can actually check out what's going on in there and how all this hardware actually works. We've got our AMD GPU and then Intel GPU going on here. So the integrated GPU there for the CPU is there. So we've got the driver and everything for that as well. And then the GPU is the ARC one here. We've got the latest driver for that available as well. And let's do a little bit of a test of CPU power. How much power are we going to be pulling? I've made a very conservative fan curve for this, so it should, stay quite quiet as long as possible. 200 watts, 86 degrees. The cores are going 5.1 to 5.2 gigahertz on all cores, all 12 cores, which is quite insane. Okay, now we can see how the cooler liquid is getting saturated with heat, and we are 91 degrees now at 185 watts. As you can see, the clock speeds have dropped a little bit. You can see some of these are not 5.2 anymore. It's 5.1, 5.2, something like that. Some of them are pulling down. I think we're going to be better than M1 Ultra. Yeah, look at that. Better than the 20-core M1 Ultra. And we're absolutely smoking it. 1,659 points. Right, let's try PBO. We're going to put on Precision Boost Overdrive and let's see what's it going to be like then. So I'm putting the glass on here so that the airflow would be better, because right now the intake will just push it out. Right now I want it to be positive air pressure so that all the air that comes in will actually get pushed out from the top. So we've got Profile 1 here attached. Precision Boost Overdrive is on. Let's see what happens. Interesting, it's still not pushing more than 180, 190 watts. What I want to find out is how does the cooling work for the SSD here, okay? So as we are running this Cinnabon temperature, so the CPU is putting a lot of heat to the actual SSD block there as well. So we're going to install Thermark as well and put some heat to the GPU as well. Okay, I hope this is the ARC now that's going. So as you can see, our GPU now is putting 183 watts there as well. So I want to see if the drive temperature is going higher than what it is right now. So the whole point of the GPU and CPU temperature, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to leave this one on so it will figure these out, is to actually heat up the drive, and I want to see if I can heat it up. So while we're doing this, while the CPU and GPU are putting power and heat into the system, well, I've got two SSDs plugged in, one on the top there and then one in the back there. Firstly, I'm going to take this folder here that is like 0.5 terabyte or 300 something gigabytes in size, and I'm going to paste it to the documents. So we're writing onto the SSD as well. As you can see, the drive temperature now is 62 degrees. We're writing onto it, so that should be quite fast. So that should put some heat onto the SSD. While that's doing that, I'm gonna take some files on the desktop and I'm gonna write it onto the SSD that's on the back there, which means that we're gonna read and write at the same time from the SSD that's in there to really see what's happening while pushing so much heat to it. So 64 degrees. So the temperature 2 is the actual NAND, and then drive 3 is the controller. Looks like the controller is going to be 5. The NAND is 63, 64. Let's see if it goes anything above that. While it's doing that, I'm going to take Crystal Disk Mark on the desktop and make it go in on the Crystal Disk Mark test as well to really see if we can push it more than 64 degrees. Bear in mind, our GPU is 81 degrees. That pushes a lot of heat through there. And our CPU is about 90 degrees, pushing 200 watts in there. Whew. The GPU is red hot on the back of there, but the cooler seems to be still cooling it down. Oh my word, the backplate of the GPU is very, very hot. Looks like above 65, we're not gonna go on the NAND there. It seems to be cooling it down quite well. Now let's see if the NAND temperature goes down if we stop this and we stop the CPU test. So the GPU and CPU have stopped, but the SSD is still going. As you can see, the SSD is writing a bit faster than before now once I've stopped it, and the temperature is going down. So as you can see, it is to do with the cooling temperature, and the SSD is most likely going to be absolutely fine under that heatsink there. It's the little details that matter. This over here is the front panel USB-C cable, and as you can see, it is super nice and slim, made like that. Now, when did you see a cable that's had so much attention to it? Can you see? It's nicely slim. It's not one of those black cables that you can't bend over. It's very slim. I like this a lot. Look how it looks. But hey, I'm here to actually show you what I promised in the beginning in the intro, which is Intel Quicksync on AMD platform. So the AMD platform is the CPU and the motherboard and so on. We do have the Intel GPU, and because of that, we get some very interesting things. Firstly, I ran the standard Puget Bench benchmark for Premiere Pro, just if you're interested in checking out what the score would be. If you look at the long GOP score and interframe score, they're very, very high. The only thing that keeps the whole score down is the GPU effects. The GPU effects aren't very powerful or very good on the ARC, but bear in mind, in order how they test the GPU effects, like all lumetri color and all the GPU effects, they're actually quite light on Premiere Pro. They test them like 40 layers of lumetri color or something like that in order to actually start to differentiate which cards are better in there. So here is my Premiere Pro test timeline, and if you've seen me do any of the tests on all the live streams, you're probably familiar with some of the codecs. But there's lots of different codecs, long GOP, different bit depths, different frame rates, like 60 frames, 24 frames, 120 frames, but mostly H.264 and 5 as well. I'm gonna leave the task manager open on this right side so you can see the ARC GPU. Whenever the video decode 1 or 2, or in this case 0 and 1, get used, then you'll see that we're using the media engines on the hardware to actually utilize this and play this back. We've got 60 frames per second, 422, 8-bit, and look at that, we're using the GPU to process this. As you can see, video decode there, we're playing it back over there. On the top, we've got a little bit of a adjustment layer where there's a few effects in there, and that's why our GPU is quite utilized. Let's have a look, how much are we using? Quite a lot of power, 192 watts by just playing this back there. Now, this is 422 10-bit H.264, and that usually goes onto the CPU. If I take the color grade off, you can see how our GPU goes down. I'll show you what I have here as well. So we've got 3 lumetri color, VRD noise, which is quite heavy there as well. So different LUTs, curves, everything on top, so you can see if it plays back. And we're playing back full resolution, and we're dropping 0 frames, which is absolutely insane. Now this is CPU playback. As you can see, we're not decoding there, but it gets interesting when we get to this bit over here. So this codec here is H.265, 10-bit, 422. If you remember the 10 grand Threadripper system that we built, even that system is struggling to play this back. It just can't do it because this codec is so heavy if you want to decode it on your CPU or software. Unless you've got a dedicated hardware media engines that can decode it. There's only two in the world that can do it, Intel and Apple. Intel can do it on the iGPU, if you've got iGPU, but also on the dedicated GPU. So all of the Intel Arc GPUs have dual media engines that can play it back. And here we're gonna see this in action. I'm gonna put the color grade back on. And firstly, I'm just gonna zoom in so I can just scrub through the timeline, which is extremely just smooth. Like wherever I'm going, it's all right. If I take the color grade off, it's buttery smooth. Like as fast as I'm moving it, that's how fast the picture moves. And it's absolutely fine. As you can see, we're decoding it in there. This clip gets decoded on the one media engine and this one goes to the other one. As you can see, decode on the other one and then now on this side. And even if I'm gonna put the color grade on and press play, it's gonna play it back no problem, like instantly. As soon as you press play, it starts playing it back. Full resolution, 4K, 10-bit, 422, and it plays it back at 60 frames per second, no problem. Now that is very impressive, and that's how you can get Intel Quicksync. Now, one more thing you might be asking is, did you press any special settings or did you put anything else on in order to get this? Actually, no, not really. The only thing I adjusted for Premiere Pro is a little tip for you if you're a video editor. Go to the preferences and memory. If you're running 32 gigabytes, make sure that the RAM reserved for other applications is as small as possible because Premiere Pro likes to use more than 32 gigabytes, which I have there on the Crucial Pro RAM. In terms of if you go project settings and renderer, we're just using OpenCL GPU acceleration and it just works. All you have to do is install the driver for the Arc A770 and off you go. Don't you think this is cool? So where is this fan actually getting air from? Well, underneath here, as you can see, it shines through. There is a little dust filter that you can change and swap out if you wanted to. Well, they've thought about everything, haven't they? Now, feel free to check out the links in the description below because I'm gonna leave you some alternatives as well, how you can save some money if you're not particularly happy with this GPU design, for example. There are some GPU options out there, and check out the different prices in different stores because when you click on my links, you can go to Amazon, Newegg, and other places. So check out where is the best pricing at the current time when you're watching this video because you can save even more. Also, at the time of me making this video, the SSD pricing between the 1 and 2 terabytes is $10. So the 1 terabyte is $139 and then the 2 terabyte is $149. So highly recommend checking out the different capacities of the SSDs as well when you're purchasing one because you might get extra storage for only pennies more. Then comes the PSU, fans and AIO, and here's where you can actually save a little bit. Now, the PSU I'm using is super expensive and for most people, I probably wouldn't recommend that. It does come with very nice sleeved cables, but you can buy PSU extension cables, very similar ones, for a lot cheaper. You can get a 1000 watt power supply that I'm going to leave in the description below, easily there, and I'll leave some cable sleeves there as well if you want black cable sleeved or even white ones. I'll leave them down there if you want to pick them out. Then these Cougar fans are quite special actually because they're a little bit of more like towards the performance side because you have 28 millimeters, you have 2200 RPM, and it's ARGB. So that makes the fans quite expensive. Now, there are some savings that you can have for the fans if you don't like this particular, look, or get just white ones or get other designs, but perhaps you're going to lose a little bit of performance. So I'll leave those in the description below as well. Now, I can see this same AIO on Amazon for around $400 used. So I don't think Team Group actually continued this AIO, but there is the same AIO without the SSD, just the Siren one, sold for $125. And to be honest, your SSD doesn't actually need that much cooling. This was just to kind of effect and try it out and make something different. But honestly, you don't really need that. It looks pretty cool in there, but the looks pretty cool is gonna cost you a lot of dollars, so maybe don't do that. I'll leave the non-SSD AIO in the description below, as well as some other alternatives that go between 100 and 125, so check them out in there. So in total, this PC is gonna set you back $1,762 at the point of me making this video. Whenever you're watching this, it might be even cheaper. Bear in mind, if you wanna use my PSU, that's gonna cost you extra $140. Then that takes you close to $1,900 and $2,000. But for $1,762, this PC is insane of a deal, because it packs so much performance and so much upgradability. Now, if you went to Apple, for example, You can get a MacBook Air M3 15-inch for the same price with 16 gigs of storage and 512 gigabytes of RAM. Now we have so much more and have so much more upgradability in the future. I always like comparisons with Apple because that kind of puts the PCs in perspective and really shows you, wow, this is a good deal. And that's all. If you do want to reach out to me, I'll always get back to my Minect messages, so that will be linked in the description below as well. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll meet you in the comment section below. Bye bye.